Are these the uncontrolled body movements of a man who just experienced a tragic accident? Or a victory dance from someone that thinks he got away with murder?
I didn't initially know that she was real.
This is Jesse Kempson, the man who crossed paths with Grace Millane, a bright-eyed young woman on the verge of fulfilling her lifelong dream of backpacking the world. They met through Tinder. But for Grace, it was the last date she would ever go on. After her death, Jesse would claim it was merely an accident during rough sex. We will never know for sure what happened inside that room. But we know that the security footage we are going to show you captured his every movement in the hours and days after. For Grace Millane's parents, David and Jillian, the extensive CCTV brought both relief and confirmation of the truth. Alongside the horror of witnessing Jesse's methodical movements after taking her life. Cameras documented nearly every step, creating what investigators described as an unprecedented digital trail of evidence. His calculated actions, all recorded, would ultimately expose the truth behind his lies. What if your every move after a crime was recorded? For Jesse Kempson, later revealed to be a serial predator and compulsive liar who'd assaulted other women he met on Tinder, this wasn't hypothetical. It was reality. Born in December 1991 in New Zealand, Jesse Shane Kempson grew up in a troubled home, shaped by instability and rejection. His parents separated when he was just 3 years old, leaving him to navigate a childhood marked by chaos. His father could be violent. His mother wanted nothing to do with him, and this foundation, built on neglect and volatility, would shape the man he would later become. On December 1, 2018, after having just lost another job in telemarketing and downing a few beers alone, he met Grace, his latest Tinder match, outside the Sky City Casino. Before leaving for their date, Grace was quickly snapping a festive Christmas photo to send her family back home. As they moved through Auckland that night, a vast network of digital eyes tracked their every move, building one of New Zealand's most detailed digital evidence trails in a murder investigation. Before we continue, we are going to show you how CCTV solved this murder case. Think about everything we show, and at the end, tell us, would you sacrifice privacy for justice? Auckland's sophisticated CCTV infrastructure, from streets and bars to hotel lobbies and elevators, offered detectives an unflinching record of Grace's final hours and her killer's chilling aftermath. Detective Inspector Scott Beard, who led the investigation, said this wasn't a difficult case. The focus was on finding Grace, and with so much CCTV and cell phone evidence, we believed all along that we would. But as it progressed, it just got sadder and sadder. The surveillance began at 5:30 p.m., capturing Grace and Jesse meeting outside the casino for their first date, one that would also be her last. Cameras tracked them through bars like Mexican Cafe and Bluestone Room, capturing their every exchange, unaware of the tragedy to come. By 9:40 p.m., City Life Hotel's lobby footage showed them entering, followed by elevator cameras at 9:41 p.m. recording their ascent to Jesse's room, Grace's last moments alive, frozen in digital memory. What sets this case apart is the footage's volume and clarity. Detectives amassed over 6 terabytes of surveillance data, enough to fill 1,300 DVDs, providing a nearly uninterrupted visual timeline, unlike the fragmented glimpses typical in murder cases. The sharp contrast lies between Grace's excitement as a 21-year-old backpacker and Jesse's methodical cover-up, starting just hours after her death. On the morning of December 2nd, 2018, Grace Millane's 22nd birthday, her family's loving messages piled up, unanswered. Meanwhile, Jesse Kempson was executing a systematic, emotionless plan. Hours earlier, at 1:36 a.m., he'd Googled way to cure ranges and hottest fire, revealing his intent. By 8 a.m., he stepped out of his room, glancing at the camera with what prosecutors later argued was a calculated awareness, a disturbing calmness despite the supposed accident. What makes this footage so disturbing is what lay behind in that room. Grace's body, strangled for 5 to 10 minutes, as pathologist Dr. Simon Stables later testified. Yet Kempson's first move wasn't to seek help. He pressed the lobby button and began his morning with cold deliberation. Within minutes, he reached the warehouse where cameras captured him sizing up suitcases, measuring their capacity with his hands before selecting the largest one, alongside surface cleaners and trash bags. His shopping continued at a nearby supermarket. Bleach, rubber gloves, more bags, all chosen with unnerving precision, masking his true intent. In just 90 minutes, he collected the tools and supplies for the calculated cleanup and disposal of human remains. Back in his room, he spent hours scrubbing away the evidence. Crime scene analysts later found blood residue, its patterns consistent with a cover-up, not an accident. These actions directly contradicted his courtroom claim of a tragic mishap during consensual rough sex. Detective Inspector Scott Beard put it bluntly, strangling someone for 5 to 10 minutes till they die is not rough sex. By midday, Kempson had morphed from a nightlife charmer into a crime scene cleaner, his every move captured, a portrait of someone capable of coldly isolating murder with calculated composure, while Grace's birthday wishes went unread. By 2:00 p.m. on December 2nd, with Grace's body still locked away in his room, Jesse Kempson, dressed in the same shirt from the previous night, walked calmly through Auckland's streets, gearing up for another Tinder date. This new Tinder date later reported that he had some disturbing conversation, speaking about burying bodies and his friends who were police officers. The date said he made her feel so uneasy she declined his offer to go to his car and made her own way home, never talking to him again. Judge Simon Moore, sentencing Kempson, later described this as conduct that underscores a lack of empathy, a sense of entitlement, and objectification of women. His ability to glide from killing to casual flirting stunned investigators. Prosecutor Brian Dickey called it a profound lack of normal human emotional response. Hours after strangling Grace, Kempson smiled for cameras, sipping drinks, his calm facade a shocking contrast to the horror he'd left behind, a contradiction that revealed his true nature. Jesse's cold composure was about to crack in a moment captured on security footage that prosecutors used to tie him irrevocably to Grace Millane's burial site. On December 3rd, shortly after renting a red Toyota Corolla and visiting the Waitakere Ranges, where Grace's body would later be discovered, CCTV cameras at the City Life Hotel recorded something very unsettling. Jesse Kempson walking through the parking garage without shoes, his pants visibly soiled with distinctive clay, matching the exact spot where Grace lay in a shallow grave roughly 10 meters from the road. Earlier that day, Jesse had visited Western ITM, a hardware store where security cameras tracked him purchasing a large shovel. Cell phone data placed him in the Waitakere Ranges for approximately 3 hours before he returned to the hotel, during which investigators believed he buried Grace's body. He had cleaned the rental car before returning it, and in the days that followed, Jesse made multiple visits to a dry cleaner, as if desperately trying to erase something that, if found, could tie him irrevocably to the crime. Most disturbing was Jesse's apparent lack of concern about being seen in this disheveled state. Security footage shows him walking through the hotel's public areas, unconcerned by the cameras he surely knew were present, a stark contrast to his otherwise meticulous efforts, like dumping Grace's belongings in Albert Park bins earlier that day, desperately trying to bury the truth. This behavior contradicted his earlier precision, hinting at a rushed decision in the ranges. The mystery of the missing shoes created another forensic link, Police never recovered footwear matching the soil patterns despite extensive searches. But investigators identified footage of Jesse wearing new shoes the following day, suggesting he deliberately discarded the original pair to eliminate evidence. Court records show this barefoot return was included in the prosecution's evidence files, though it wasn't a focal point during trial proceedings. Still, it remains a haunting image, the physical effort of concealing Grace's body etched into his appearance, captured as his mask of control began to slip. For all his careful efforts, cleaning his rental car, disposing of Grace's belongings, and trying to erase every trace of evidence from the hotel room, he was still able to put on an act, pretending to be surprised as he asked the detective, "Have I been arrested for a crime I didn't do?"
Hey, I just want to ask a question. Have I been arrested for something I didn't do?
The hotel's lobby camera captured a moment so disturbing that normal people like you and I could never comprehend it, no matter how hard we tried. What compels a man who has just hidden a woman's body to perform a celebratory dance? On December 3rd, approximately 9:30 p.m., the City Life Hotel's lobby was quiet as Jesse Kempson returned the luggage trolley he'd used moments earlier to transport Grace Millane's body, concealed in the suitcase he'd selected 2 days before. As he pushed the trolley back to its storage area, Jesse performed a spontaneous hop-skip with arms slightly raised, a move that defied all his calculated composure, before continuing to the elevator. The dance lasted only seconds, but its implications were profound. Jesse had completed the physical task of moving Grace's body from his room to his rental car, a dark turning point in his cover-up. The satisfaction visible in his body language revealed his true emotions, not remorse or distress, but something far more disturbing, a brief, unsettling smirk of satisfaction. The contrast between passing moments of triumph and his courtroom testimony was stark. During the trial, he wept while defending Grace's death as an accident during consensual rough sex, that he panicked and lived with deep remorse. When shown the footage during cross-examination, Jesse claimed he couldn't remember why he'd made the gesture. "I was probably just stretching," he told the court, a response prosecutor Brian Dickey later dismissed as part of a defense built on deception in closing arguments. Throughout the investigation, Jesse maintained control over his presentation. He smiled during his Tinder date hours after the murder, appeared calm during questioning, and kept his composure during most interactions caught on camera. But in this unfiltered moment, when he believed himself free of Grace's body, his true emotions came to light. For investigators, these 5 seconds of unscripted behavior contradicted his claims of accidental death more effectively than hours of interrogation could have, exposing a man pleased with his actions, not broken by guilt. Beyond the thousands of hours of surveillance footage tracking Jesse's movements was another digital trail, one that opened a window directly into his thoughts in the aftermath of Grace's death. Within hours of her estimated time of death, between midnight and 2 a.m. on December 2nd, Jesse had already shifted into problem-solving mode. He researched way to cure ranges at 1:36 a.m., hottest fire at 1:41 a.m., and even flesh-eating birds and are there vultures in NZ, searches forensic experts called a digital roadmap of forethought, not panic. During the investigation, police discovered 7 explicit photos of Grace Millane's body on Jesse Kempson's phone, taken after her death. These photos were presented as evidence during the trial, highlighting Kempson's escalating disturbing behavior following her murder. His digital behavior showed unsettling apathy. Within 3 hours of taking these photographs, Jesse visited multiple pornography websites, spending nearly an hour browsing explicit content while Grace's body remained in his room. While CCTV captured his composed public movements, his private digital activities revealed his true mindset. At 4:30 a.m., he searched for large bags near me and car hire Auckland no credit card. By 6 a.m., He had researched the depth of soil in the Waitakere Ranges, precisely where Grace's body would later be found. This digital evidence, when combined with the CCTV footage, created what prosecutors called a digital physical timeline that methodically undermined Jesse's defense. His searches, photos, and fabricated alibi painted a picture of cold calculation, not panic, a chilling glimpse into the mind of a killer who saw Grace as a problem to be solved, not a life lost. At the time of Grace's disappearance, Jesse Shane Kempson had no significant criminal record, but after his arrest, more victims came forward. He would later be convicted of 8 separate charges, including physical, sexual, emotional, and financial abuse of an ex-girlfriend, along with the rape of another woman he had met through Tinder. Grace Millane wasn't his first victim, but tragically, she was the one who didn't survive. For murdering Grace, Jesse received life imprisonment with a minimum 17-year non-parole period, justice delivered through the unblinking eye of Auckland's surveillance network. Jesse Kempson remains unrepentant. During his 2020 rape trial sentencing, linked to an April 2018 Tinder assault, he snarled at Justice Geoffrey Venning, "You have no reason to convict me, and I can't wait for the Court of Appeal to overturn you, mate. You're full of shit."
You're so full of You have no reason to convict me. You're full of
Echoing his denial after Grace's murder and earlier abuse convictions. This defiance underscores a man who sees himself above consequence, even as evidence mounts. Auckland's surveillance net, cameras, payment records, cell data ensnared him, proving killers can't vanish in a digital age. Grace's case, one of New Zealand's most watched, spurred debates on domestic violence and justice, amplified by her vibrant spirit and tragic end. The technology that tracked Kempson's every step spoke when she couldn't, ensuring her legacy endures as a guardian of truth for victims silenced too soon. So knowing now that Jesse Kempson is locked safely behind bars and no longer able to murder innocent girls he approached on Tinder, do you think we need more or less CCTV cameras on the streets?